Hello, everyone. Good afternoon, and welcome back to another author interview here on Tales from the Wandering Scribe. I'm your host, Gabriel Garcia. Many of you know me as the Wandering Scribe and the Wandering Quill. And joining us today is an author making their official debut here on the channel. Now, my guest today, an historical fiction author of her debut novel and the start of her series, Saoirse. During the day, she works as an administrative assistant in public health, and at night, she is a devoted writer. She's a local of the Black Hills, but grew up spending time along the shores of Lake Michigan. It's her love of these diverse places and their histories, along with family lore, that inspires her stories. So, without further ado, let's give a huge round of applause to our guest today, historical fiction writer Liz Wahl. Liz, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. I'm very excited today.
Awesome, Liz. I'm so excited to have you here. And I see you have a very beautiful binder with an amazing cover on it. You're
Yes,
welcome.
this is the entire Saoirse world in one little binder.
Nice,
Mhm.
nice. Now, without revealing too much, Liz, what can readers expect from your debut novel?
Oh, twist turns, heartbreak, love, all of the emotions. I really want them to feel it all. I'm not a writer to hold back when it comes to throwing punches at my readers. Sorry, readers.
All
But
right, all
I do
right.
like a good happy ending. Will you get it? I don't know.
We'll just have to see. We'll just
Now
have
read
to
it.
wait and see. Absolutely, absolutely. But again, Liz, I am so excited to have you here on the show. I've been looking forward to this interview all week. Now, before we dive into your background as a writer and the creation of Saoirse, as a little icebreaker question, what's a random fact about you that not a lot of people know?
I actually just got certified as a mental health first aider. So,
Ooh,
yeah,
congratulations.
thank you. I'm very happy about that. I take mental health very seriously, so I'm a big advocate for it. And getting that certification was really great. And I'm starting to get more also into being a vocal advocate for DV and looking into possibly being a counselor at our local shelter here.
That's amazing. A very, very noble profession, Liz. Very amazing. So let's actually talk a little bit more about you, Liz, as we dive into this incredible work of yours. Now, from your bio, you tend to work at night to, write your stories and develop this amazing world. But I'm curious,
Mhm.
what would you consider to be your aha moment that really led you down this path? Were you always a creative person growing up, or did that come later in life?
I always was creative, but I didn't like take it too seriously. I never honestly considered writing until I read Dracula, and I don't know what it was about that book in particular because I've been a reader my whole life growing up, but it was just something about Bram Stoker's writing that it was like I could do this, and that was kind of my aha moment to really put my creativity into writing.
Awesome. Okay. All right. Now, let's actually dive into the creation of your debut novel. Now, let's start with the title itself. How did the title really come about?
So I really wanted to take the mafia genre and just change it. I, am a fan of like The Godfather, Boardwalk Empire. I'm a big history nerd too, so I'm a big history buff just when it
Yeah.
comes to mafia stuff. And I personally, and this could sound so funny, like the history of the Irish mafia here in America over the Italian mob here in America because the Irish one's not as well known.
Yes, that
And
is
that
true.
is on purpose. They had a whole thing about like the man behind the man. They did not want you to know about them. So they were never upfront. And so that's kind of how the idea started and the seed of it to go with Irish names and things like that. The title itself kind of goes into a twist within the book, which so Saoirse is supposed to be dead, and everybody thinks she's dead. So the name's dead, gone. There's nobody to carry on the Shea name, nobody to carry on the mafia. until they realize it's coming back and they don't know who's in control of it.
Oh,
Mhm.
okay, okay. So it's almost like the way I'm understanding it's almost like a title of somebody, and no one knows who's the new Saoirse in this world. They have no
Mhm.
idea who it is, and that terrifies them.
Yep, they have no idea. They're trying to figure it out because the last time the Shays were in control, they had an all-out civil war among themselves and like destroyed the whole town.
All right,
Mhm.
okay. Now, time period wise, when does your book take place? Are we talking early 20th century, modern times?
I picked a very niche time. It is at the end of the 50s, start of the 60s. Actually, starts in 1959 because that is when the FBI just started to do undercover investigations.
Oh,
Mhm.
okay. Very, very nice. Very good time period too for, crime related stories because
Mhm.
usually stories set around criminal organizations is usually like either the golden age or like the early 20th century
Yeah.
or even later in like the late 70s, 80s, and
Mhm.
90s.
Yeah, I wanted that really niche, like, to kind of show like how it could happen. You know, how could
Absolutely.
this get away with that for so long? It's like, well, there was a time period.
Nice. Okay.
Mhm.
All right. Now, as you mentioned earlier, Liz, you are a big history buff, and I'm just very curious, as a fellow history lover, how much research did you really do to get everything right? I know at the end of the day, both of us are historical fiction writers. We want to tell great stories, but the history's got to back it up.
I have done so much. I have a whole shelf on my bookshelf that's just mafia history, but I've also gotten into arguments with a couple editors because they try to correct me on a couple historical facts, and I was like, no, no, you are wrong. Let me show you. Um, because there's McKellen hearings that happened, but most people don't realize there was a first hearing in 1959 that happened that started the undercover FBI agents, going undercover. And then there was a whole separate one, and everybody remembers the whole separate one, which took place in the 60s. So
Ah.
I am very like, I did so much research that I sound like a conspiracy theorist at this point when I'm trying to correct people on facts.
All right. I like that. I like that. Now, I also got to ask too, when you were initially drafting your debut novel, how did you balance everything in terms of time when, writing your book late at night and also having your day job too? Because that's another thing that not a lot of people talk about as authors. We have to juggle a lot of different things to not burn out.
Yeah, it's a lot. I'm actually just broke a personal record today. I worked 19 days straight so far this month. Yeah. But I'm naturally a night owl anyways, so a lot of the times my best work comes at night. And I really like when I'm really tired and then you write and you read over it the next day and you're like, those aren't words at all. But I just find those good days where I feel up to it and I can stay up late and I can go with it. But if I'm tired and I know I've had too long of a day and I know I have a long day the next day, I don't write and I don't force myself to write, which is the
Mhm.
biggest thing. And I think a lot of people need to kind of do that more because the advice of write every day is fantastic advice. It's not realistic for a lot of people. And I think people just need to be okay with that because yeah,
Yes.
you can't write every day, and that's okay.
You're absolutely right. And you know what, Liz? You're actually the second person that I've heard that from on the show. My good friend, Mark McLean, another author, said the same thing. Now, while that may work for a lot of people, I mean, how much creativity you're going to pump out continuously? It's not going to work. You're going to burn yourself out. There needs to be a break period to recharge.
Mhm. Yeah.
Very true. Very, very true. So, this is a two-part question, Liz. As you were drafting this book and trying to get as polished as you could be before sending it to an editor, what was your ultimate goal for this debut novel of yours? And ultimately, the promise you're making, not just to yourself, but also to your readers, because that's going to lead into a later discussion down the road.
I can definitely say it has evolved from when I started to like when it's been completed. When I started, I was a lot younger. So I started this book maybe 10, 11 years ago now. And it was just like, I have this great idea and I want everybody to hear my amazing idea. And that was kind of the start of that. But as I've gotten older and I've gone through things in my life that are very reflective in the book, it's more of like, I really wanted to share this amazing story that's also very, close to my heart and my family and share that with everybody. And a big part of the book kind of touches on generational trauma,
Mm-hmm.
which we have in my family. And I really wanted to like, one, it helped me work through it. And two, just to show people that like, it's a true thing and, how it affects people.
Yes, 100%. Now it's a little fun little question, Liz. Would you consider yourself to be a planner or a pantser when it
Oh,
came to writing?
I'm a pantser all the way. I have tried so hard to outline and it's just no, that's so funny. That's a funny idea. But pantsing, and it has never steered me wrong.
I've tried pantsing. It does not work for me. I like to be outlined very much, although I will deviate from the outline here and there depending on the story. And this kind of goes into a very fun fan question that I have for you, Liz. Do you believe that authors tell the story through the characters, or do you think it's the other way around, that characters tell the story and the author is just the vehicle?
I think the characters tell the story and the author's the vehicle, because I don't know how many times my character takes the scene in a completely different direction than I imagined and I wanted it to go in. And I'm like, whoa, wait a minute, girl. I didn't say we were doing that today. So, yeah, I definitely think it's the characters.
Very true. Very, very true, Liz. And on the notion of characters, it leads to another set of questions. Now, these may border on spoiler, so feel free to give as much or as little as you want to these questions. Now, this is a very tough starting one. When writing this book, who was your favorite character to flesh out, and who was the most painstakingly difficult character to showcase?
Most favorite is Saoirse herself. I love her. She's the doll. She's still one of my like all-time favorite characters out of everything I've written. Um, she's a ball of fun, and I'm just gonna leave it to that for the readers. Uh, the one that was probably one of the hardest is our male main character, Kit. He was a little difficult sometimes because I'd be like, oh, this is a great idea and he needs to do this. And I'd have to stop and be like, oh, no, that's really stupid and he can't do that. And this man is really stupid and I need to make him smarter.
Okay. All right. All right. Now, so on the topic of characters, Liz, since you wanted to have these characters exist at a very specific time in not only history, but also in the underworld's history as well,
Mm-hmm.
how did you make them feel authentic? That they're not caricatures of the mafia genre, but they feel like regular people that we would see on the streets.
I think with Kit, it was a little easier to do that because it's like, the FBI is well known. It's more of an established thing. And I can make that connection a little bit easier with him. And like, he is just an everyday Joe. And that's how he's presenting himself to be too. With Saoirse, it was a little trickier, but I think the main thing with her, and that kind of has connected with readers and everything, is just what she's gone through and what that kind of shaped her as a person, especially within that time period, not only just in the regular time, there, but within the underworld as well. Because her being a woman and trying to take over a mafia is, unheard of. And she's very like, I don't care. I'm going to do this. And my male counterparts can just deal with it.
Very true. Very, very true. And this kind of goes into a question I really want to hear your thoughts on, because I think, to my knowledge, I don't think I have a lot of authors I've had on the show that have either written about, organized crime, or have written for the mafia genre. And in recent years, the mafia genre has tended towards the more romance side, Not that anything wrong with the subgenre of like the mafia romance or the mafia boyfriend, but I definitely think a lot of readers are looking for, books like The Godfather or something that reminds them of like Goodfellas or The Untouchables. When writing Saoirse, how did you make sure that it was still going to be enjoyable for readers of the mafia genre, but also staying true to your voice as the author and not have it lead so heavily into romance as like that's the main thing? Like there may be some romance in it, but it's
Yeah,
not the driving force.
I think the what helped with that mainly is just the idea of like Saoirse falling in love with this FBI agent, because that automatically puts them at odds. So it can't be romance focused, it has
Right.
a whole layer of problems and stuff like that. And as much as it is a love story, I had more fun writing the mafia stuff and including it. Um, and just kind of because, see, I'm trying to like not spoil too much, but like, she's trying to get him involved because she's like, you're gonna be my man. And he's trying to get involved because he's like, I gotta bring this thing down. And so they're very cluelessly roping him into all the mafia stuff while the romance is happening on the side. But
Very
it's
true.
fun because like they can't talk to each other about the mafia stuff because they think each other doesn't know.
Absolutely. I definitely think that leads to a lot of great tension because you know that they care deeply about one another from
Mhm.
what you've told me, but they also know that they're trying to protect each other, but there's a lot of sinuating circumstances on both sides that are going to be rather dangerous if one side talks. And I think that's going to be a very interesting thing to see of how it unfolds. Now, kind of sidestepping a little bit, once you began writing the story, Liz, I'm very curious. When would you say you considered yourself an author? And the reason I bring this question up is there tends to be a hesitancy to tell people that we are authors in the sense of do we tell them that we are published with a reputable house or do we tell them that we are indies? If you tell someone that you're published with Penguin Random House, everyone loses their mind. And rightly so, getting into Penguin Random House is not easy. However, if you tell someone that you're an indie author, there is like some like hesitancy, some like wariness to like give full support. And that may kind of prevent people from, claiming ownership. And that can even make them reconsider it's like, am I really an author or am I just a writer? So for you, Liz, when did you feel comfortable in your abilities to say, yes, I am an author?
Honestly, it's been with probably in the past 2 years because it has been a very like, no, don't tell people that I write because I don't want to explain things to them. And, it is it's a very nerve-wracking thing to share that with people. And I think non-writers don't understand that is like you're sharing your ideas and you're putting yourself out there for everybody to see and you're just on display. So it's very intimidating. And like you said, when you're saying author and people are wanting to know how you're published or if you're published yet, it's very scary. And I think what really pushed me is I had a neighbor one day. I was out on my deck and he stopped and he asked me, are you an artist? And I was like, I'm an author. And he
I'm
was
a
just like,
wordsmith. Does that
yeah, he was
count?
like, that's cool. And I was like, oh my God, I'm an author.
Well, that's amazing, Liz. That is amazing. And when your book was published, Liz, what were the initial reactions like? Were they positive, very critical, or 50-50 split?
Positive, very positive. I was a little worried that Saoirse was going to be a little too gritty for female readers, and I have been surprised at how much they've actually loved it.
That's amazing. That is awesome, Liz. It's kind of another little fun fan question. Besides working in the public health department, what are your other hobbies outside of writing?
I'm a big fan of hiking and camping. I try to spend as much time in the summer outdoors. Since I'm in the Black Hills, we have gorgeous hiking trails and lakes and campgrounds. So I try to spend as much time outside. In the winter, when I'm stuck inside, I read a lot and play video games.
Nice. Love that. Love that. And this is actually is ooh, okay. This is another good fun fan question. It's something that you just mentioned earlier in the call of how this actually is going to be a series. This fan would like to know, without spoiling too much information, will readers get a chronological story following the same characters, or will it be an anthology series about people in that world but tied to the Shea family one way or another?
It will be chronological. Book 2 picks up pretty much where book 1 ends. And that's pretty much the theme. There's going to be 4 total. It was only meant to be 3. 3 got too big. Now it's 4. But each one pretty much picks up where the first one left off. Just because there's so much going on, and it is such a tight time frame in which all of this happens historically. Because the Irish Mafia, unfortunately, did pretty much disappear by the 1970s. So there's not too much time there. But I will say they changed location from first book to second book, and then fourth book as well. But we go from, out west, smaller place, smaller setting, to the big city.
Absolutely. All right. I like that. And still going back to the topic of history, this is another question I want to ask you from one historical fiction writer to another. What is another time period or time frame that you would love to explore in another book series?
The Old West. I'm a huge
Ooh, that's
yeah.
a good one.
I love it, and I think part of that is where I live. It's just I'm huge into all of the Wild West, Old West history. I do have actually another series I'm working on that is set kind of on the frontier. So
Nice. That's actually really good. I definitely think you don't see a lot of historical fiction books set in the Old West, or if they are, there tend to be, a little bit more on the romance side. Again, not that there's anything wrong with, cowboy romance, but the Western genre is so much more than that. There's a lot of great stories that can be shared, and that's now kind of pushing me to eventually write my own. It's semi-historical, semi-cinematic, and it's one I'm calling Shadows of Honor, a samurai western, which follows a young American, son of a Union soldier, lives in Japan for 20 years. Father gets murdered, goes on a revenge quest that takes him from Japan to the States, to Mexico, to Italy, to Egypt, and then all the way back to Japan, spanning a journey from 1869 to 1876.
wow, that's cool. I like that concept a lot.
Yeah, there's a lot. There is a lot, and that story I kind of like the premise of, because it's just so completely out there. But that is going to be a discussion for another, because I can talk about that future project all day long.
I know the feeling.
Yeah, absolutely. That's the thing about historical fiction writers. We always have new ideas that we're constantly thinking of, but realize we can't do that yet. We got to finish up on this. Now, that actually kind of goes into another question, because this is set in a very specific time frame that's very niche. Did the chapters follow? And again, this kind of may be a spoiler question. Do the chapters follow a lead up towards a major event, like as you mentioned, the hearings? Do all the chapters eventually lead up to the hearings, or do the hearings already exist throughout the story?
So the hearings already exist throughout the story. It's more kind of to give context as to why the FBI is starting to infiltrate and stuff like that. But as far as like big historical events go, they're not necessarily built up to it, but the big historical events that happen within this time frame are definitely incorporated within it.
Okay, that makes sense. That makes sense. And now these next set of questions, Liz, focus on what does it mean to be an author in the digital age? Because being an author in the digital age is a blessing and a curse, especially when you count social media. Now, social media is such a useful tool for us authors. It allows us to connect with our readers, promote our books, do everything we need to do, and more. It is such an amazing thing. But it's a double-edged sword. It can be very exhausting, very time-consuming. Um, it's never been more easy to be published, but it's never been more difficult to market ourselves. And that's where I think a lot of authors are struggling at this point in their journey, is trying to market themselves, because everything gets heightened to an 11. Our writer's block gets heightened to an 11 when people are asking, when's the next book coming out? When's the next thing going to happen? Is this going to happen? Is this going to happen? And then people comparing our works to, these literary titans. And while that may be good to get more readers involved, as the author, we feel our imposter syndrome heightened, because we feel as if we're not worthy to be a part of that Mount Rushmore of amazing authors. So ultimately, Liz, what has disciplined you to stay true to yourself as the author of Saoirse, and ultimately the rest of the books in this series, and possibly future works down the road?
I'm also just naturally stubborn is a huge thing, where it's like, no, this is the way I'm going to do it. This is the way I want to tell it. And I think a big thing, especially when it comes to Saoirse, is just that I've never seen anything else like it. And I don't say that to be like, oh, this idea is so amazing. It's that I wrote this because I couldn't find anything else like it. And I wanted something so specific that, like I've heard the quote, if you can't, find it and you want to read it, write it.
Right.
And that's exactly what I did. But as far as like staying disciplined and true to myself, I keep my own private little story that I know will never be published. And it's a hot mess. There's, no plot, no nothing. My little pantser heart can do to it whatever it wants, because I know it's never going to see the light of day. And I think that helps a lot, because then when I have like a really crazy idea and I know it can't work in a normal book, it just goes in there.
All right. Nice. Very nice. Now, this next question, it's more of a debate that I've been seeing in the indie world. And it's this notion of, are we in a golden age or indie age? And I'll give a context for this question. During the lockdown, a lot of authors, including myself, began our careers writing and creating stories. I imagine, as you were also in the lockdown as well, trying to get your book ready, do everything possible to build connections, build your team of ARC readers, beta readers, everything you need. It was difficult. It was very, very challenging. And yet, in the wake of those moments of isolation, we took the industry by storm. We flooded the markets to the point, some would argue, it's oversaturated. But with the rise of AI now being pushed in, it's changed the field. And many people now believe we're not in a golden age anymore, but we're now in an iron age. But that's even split in the middle, where you have people who are passionate about the industry and those that want to make a quick buck using AI, specifically generative AI when it comes to making stories. I've had a lot of people give their thoughts on AI, and they're all completely valid and very, very true. But I would like to hear your thoughts on this, Liz, from your own experiences. Do you believe that we are still in a golden age, or have we fully transitioned into the iron age?
I think we are transitioning into the iron age. I think when the lockdown happened and everybody was able to publish, I think that was great, and I think that helped a lot of people. But I do think there's also a big issue that's not talked enough about with current publishing companies and how their standards and things need to change.
Yes.
So I think we're at a point for a really good revival of pretty much the whole publishing industry and just redoing a bunch of it. And I think it could definitely be done better to help indie authors more, and maybe make hybrid more of an option for people too.
Mm-hmm.
That way they're not stranded out there doing everything themselves, because it's a lot of work.
Absolutely. Yes. You're 100% correct, Liz. It is a lot of work. And that kind of goes in now into the business side of being an author. Now, as an icebreaker for this question, when it came to marketing your own book, what really surprised you about that aspect of the journey? And as you go into books 2 and eventually book 3, what are some things that you've learned by promoting Saoirse that you would do differently for 2 and 3?
I think the biggest thing was like, oh my God, I actually have to build a social media platform and like do it. Because I was dragging my feet for the longest time. I didn't want to. But I think that was the biggest thing. And it was really great. And I'm very happy I did that. I've actually enjoyed becoming a bit of a content creator. So I'm very happy. As far as what I would do differently, I think I'm going to be a little bit more obnoxious. I think I was a little too shy in my approaches and, a little too worried of like what people were going to think. And I think, next time around, it's going to just be more in your face.
Mm-hmm. All right. All right. Now I go into understanding the audience and the readership. And I think we did touch on this a little bit, but I'm going to go more in depth on this question because, as authors, we write for ourselves first and foremost when we're in the early stages of the book. But when it comes to publishing it, that's when you have to understand the readership and the audience. And as I mentioned earlier, readers have a certain expectation of how a book is supposed to be and how it's supposed to go. The mafia genre, the criminal organization genre, is no different from any other genre and subgenre.
Mm-hmm.
And again, readers have expectations of how a book's supposed to be. And as authors, we find ourselves in this weird equilibrium, teeter-totter seesaw, where we want to showcase our voice, showcase who we are as authors, but also write a story that's very familiar to the reader, but still different enough. As you said, Liz, there's not a lot of books like this that exist for people to readily read.
Mm-hmm.
So ultimately, it boils down to the author's voice. How did you find your voice to write Saoirse to make it your own and to stand out from others in the field of crime stories?
The first thing, is you have to read. You have to read to find your voice. And I read a lot because, you pick up little things here and there, but it definitely helps you develop your own voice. And considering most serious mafia stuff as a non-romance mafia, not that it's not good and serious, is written by men. So that was a huge thing too, is, I'm very much not like the other authors of the mafia genre. So reading how they wrote kind of helped me develop my voice too, but also to kind of see what the balance is. Whereas like, oh gosh, Mario Puzo, who did The Godfather, love it. Oh my God, his writing's amazing. But I know that for me, I want to tone down some of the stuff. Like I don't need to be as aggressive as he is, So I think, yeah, just reading a lot, absorbing a lot has really helped. And then the fact that it's also a love story at the heart of it, because I want this also to be for women too, not just men who like mafia murder stuff.
Right. So a nice little balance of the two. Okay, I feel that. Now this kind of goes into another fan question, and I think you touched on it earlier. Why do you think there's not a lot of books like these that exist, not just on focusing on like the Irish crime families, but like other crime families in like other stories or just criminal organizations, historical fictions that aren't romance based? Why do you think there's not a lot of those in the industry?
So traditionally, women in the mafia genre, they are nothing more usually than just a prop. They're a love interest at the most. And even then, it's like, oh, she was the smartest girl and stuff like that. But they don't get screen time, they don't get page time. And growing up with a family that raised me to be a strong, independent lady, I was like, well, that's really stupid. Why can't these girls get more time? Why can't they do this? And like, I love Goodfellas. And I hated the fact that like he had this amazing, strong wife, and then he's out here cheating all the time, and they never talk about the wife and how amazing and strong she was. And it's just, I think just a big part of that is because you had men writing it for so long, and that's just how they saw women, and that's how women were treated, especially in mafia spaces. They were not treated well. They were historically, beaten and treated awful. I actually, part of what kind of led to this idea is my grandpa had an aunt in Chicago who used to date mobsters. Yeah. And
Really?
yes, so they have a little family history with this, but she broke up with one of them. He showed up at her house and killed himself on her porch in front of her because she broke up with him.
Wow.
Yeah. So, it was just kind of like, wow, that's crazy. Like, oh, but she's an inspiration because she dated multiple mobsters and lived her own life and was like, no, I'm done with you.
That makes sense. Wow, that is crazy. That is such a crazy story, Liz. Thank you for sharing that.
Mm-hmm.
This is my question for you. That's also a fan question. If you had to go and write another story set in the criminal underworld, possibly about another gang family or another group that existed in the US or maybe even abroad, what era or group would you like to explore and bring to light, or at least talk about them in the way of a story?
That's a really good question. I don't know if I've ever given that much thought. Besides just like Old West kind of that mentality, that outlaw gang kind of mentality, I don't think I've really thought about it other besides the Irish Mafia here in America. Possibly, honestly, maybe Ireland during the Troubles, like with the IRA. I'd be interested in that. But honestly, I can't say I've given that too much thought.
Okay, that makes sense. There's a lot of different avenues. And I will say this, once this interview is finished, I will actually send you a book, a picture of a book that I think will be really good to add to your collection, because it's also helping me with my own mafia story called The Three Kings, which is not so much historical as it's more so trying to be almost like a movie, but I'll save that towards the end. Now, when it came down to ultimately, marketing this book, one thing I have noticed that for authors, knowing people really does help. So, are there any people that you would like to give a personal shout out to, Liz, who have helped you on your journey in helping you promote a search show or helping promote you as an author? And what have you learned from networking with these incredible people, collaborating, so to speak?
There are amazing authors also on Instagram, and getting connected with them has just been wonderful. I definitely want to shout out my bestie, Shauna, who's been my biggest cheerleader by far, but also my writing group, Women Fiction Writers Association. My mentor, Martha, has also been a huge cheerleader throughout this whole process. And then a writing group that I actually learned about through Instagram called Write On. We have a Discord where everybody pretty much helps everybody, and it's a lot of fun. And anytime you're feeling any sort of imposter syndrome, you can go on there and talk with somebody, and we all are in it together.
That's amazing, Liz. That is absolutely amazing. Now we're going to go into my favorite segment / round, the rapid fire fan question round. Be prepared. Some of these fan questions have stumped a lot of people on the show. So let's see if you can break the curse.
All right. I'm ready.
All right. Now, as a reader, which you prefer, themes or tropes in fiction?
Themes.
All right. These next two have also stumped a lot of people. Most overrated trope and most underappreciated trope in fiction.
Most underappreciated trope. Yeah, I get annoyed when things become too popular.
All right. Do you also have a specific example you would like to share about, underappreciated trope?
Ooh, I don't know if I have one off the top of my head. Oh man. Duh, that stumped me. Yeah.
What about overrated trope? I know one trope that a lot of people have said on the show that is very, very true. Enemies to lovers or friends to rivals?
Oh man, I would pick friends to rivals over enemies to lovers. I sometimes have an issue with the enemies to lovers. It has to be done just right, otherwise I just can't get on board with it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Next question. Of the 5 physical senses, which one do you think is the most difficult to write in storytelling?
Sight.
Nice. Very, very nice. Next one. What techniques do you use as an author to heighten the suspension and tension of a scene?
So when it comes to the senses there, I like to add in like sense of smell and sense of like hearing. What is that? Just to kind of build that tension because it's things you're not expecting as the reader too. You're always expecting like it felt like this, or there was this sense in the room where it's like, oh no, you had this god awful smell coming at you with this weird sound in the background.
Absolutely, absolutely. Next one, let's see if I can just find my place. Okay. Favorite way to introduce a scene with conflict? Action or emotion?
Action. I like writing fight scenes a lot. I've been told they're very good.
Nice. Very, very nice. Next one, and this actually talks about scenes, and this may be a spoilerish question. Do you have a favorite moment or scene from Saoirse that you like to share with the viewers, or one that people can expect?
I have one I can share for sure. Kit, when he goes undercover, he makes a terrible impression on the Shea family and has to fight to the death with the Shea enforcer. And he wins barely, but he gets a meat cleaver to the leg.
Ouch.
The fight scene's brutal, but it's great. And he walks out of there on his own volition, half dead.
Ooh, that is tough. That is rough. Now, these next 3 are probably some of my favorite to ask people. Now, Liz, if you had the opportunity, let's say you have an unlimited budget, would you rather adapt the Saoirse trilogy into a limited series with each book being a season or a full audiobook production?
Oh. I think I would do the limited series. Just because I would love to see it, especially since it's such a niche time period. And I think a limited series could do it justice, being able to provide it nuance.
Nice, very nice. Now, follow up to that question. Looking at the 2 leads, the female lead and the male lead, who would you cast to play those characters?
I actually wrote Kit with Evan Peters in mind because I love Evan Peters. I think
Okay, all right.
I don't know yet for Saoirse. I would honestly, it sounds so silly, but it's like I would like to pick somebody who's not well known, so it could hopefully be like a breakout thing. But I don't know who I think could do her justice.
Ooh, it would just be funny just for the laughs of it, having Saoirse Ronan playing Saoirse. That would be hysterical.
I had that thought, and like it was so funny because I didn't realize when I was writing it that I named a character after her. But then later on in the series, there's another character named Ronan, and I didn't like put together that was her name. And then I was like, oh no, should I change it?
All right. Though if I had to throw my hat in the ring of who I think could play Saoirse, it would
Yeah.
actually be the actress, the Irish actress who won in the Oscars recently. She would be perfect.
Yes. Oh my God, I love her. She would do great.
She absolutely would. Now this comes to the next one, the second to last of the fan questions. Now, if Saoirse had an original song or a song that would describe it, what song would that be?
Trust in Me by Etta James.
Ooh, I don't think I know that one. I have to
Oh,
check that one out.
it's a good one. Yes, Etta James, almost all of her songs could very well fit the book.
Nice. All right. All right. And finally, when it comes to the final stage of the writing, when you're trying to make the ending satisfying for the reader and for the author themselves, which do you think is the most difficult for them to do afterwards? Knowing when to stop editing the book or knowing when to stop writing the book?
Knowing when to stop writing the book. I think even when it comes to editing, because then like as you're editing, you can be like, oh, I just had this great scene I can add here. And like if I had the chance, I could continue writing this book and rewriting this book 100 times over. Just because I think it's part of that imposter syndrome too, where you're like, well, I learn more as a writer now, so I can do it better now, you know. But I think the writing process really never ends, even within the editing process.
No, absolutely not. Absolutely not. And finally, Liz, we arrive at the final question of this amazing author interview, and it is this. With everything we've talked about and more, what do you hope readers will take away from Saoirse and eventually the entire trilogy?
I hope they really resonate with the love story at the center of it, but can also understand that, you know, even though, yes, it is a love story, love isn't everything. Love can't save everything. And a big part of the whole Saoirse thing, her as a character, is understanding how people become the way they are and like how they are shaped as people. Like I said, mental health is a huge thing for me, and I really like showcasing that and showing people like how things affect people and the generational trauma. And I hope they kind of get an understanding of that, as well as a love story, a little bit of violence here, a little bit of violence there. And then who knows? Who knows what the ending's going to be? I don't.
Absolutely, Liz. Absolutely. And on that note, viewers and listeners, we conclude this amazing, incredible author interview here on Tales from the Wandering Scribe. Want to give a huge thank you to Liz Wahl for coming on the show, making her official debut. Now, Liz, where can people find you on social media? Social media, if they want to reach out and connect, as well as buy a copy of Saoirse. And will you be doing any in-person appearances later this year?
So you can find me on Instagram at Writing Out of the Dark. No plans yet for personal appearances. I am just a little focused on working. Got a lot of hours in my public health job I got to do. But you know, if I do have events coming up, they will be on my Instagram, and I will put all news, all announcements on my Instagram.
Awesome. I will link all that down below in the description of this video, viewers and listeners. And if you'd like to see Liz back on the show in a follow-up interview or in an episode of the Writers Hub, make sure to like this video, comment down below, and most importantly, subscribe to the channel. And again, a huge thank you to Liz for coming on the show. We wish her the very best with Saoirse and the rest of the Saoirse series. And as always, this has been the Wandering Scribe and the Wandering Quill, signing out, wishing you all a wonderful day wherever you are in the world. Happy Friday, everybody, and we'll see you all in the next episode. Take care and have a wonderful day.